My name is Talia Remington, and I was standing like a ghost in my own hallway when my parents walked into the beach house, the one they thought they had rented for their family reunion. They hadn't invited me. Of course they hadn't. Not after 10 years of silence. Not after calling my career a vanity project and cutting me off the night I chose photography over finance. But here they were. My father in a crisp linen shirt, inspecting the crown molding like it was his own design. And my mother, directing where everyone's bags should go with the same authority she once used to erase me from family photos. Neither of them had the faintest idea that the house they were occupying, the one they praised in that nauseating group text I wasn't included in, belonged to me. I didn't barge in or scream. I didn't need to. They had walked straight into my life, on my turf. And now, for once, they were the ones who didn't belong. 10 years ago, they told me I was foolish, irresponsible, impossible to reason with. 10 years ago, they made it clear. If I left their path, I'd leave their family. Well, I left. And while they held dinner parties and hosted holiday cards without me, I built something they never asked about. Something they now walked through, barefoot, complimenting the drapes. This is where the silence ends. Not for revenge, not for approval, but because some ghosts don't stay gone. They build empires and wait until the walls speak for them. The irony wasn't lost on me. The Remingtons, self-appointed curators of perfection, had unknowingly rented a house owned by the daughter they'd cut off like a poor investment. Through the upgraded security system I'd installed just days earlier, I watched them enter in real time, every step echoing across floors I had polished, under art I had personally selected, into rooms I had restored from weather-damaged ruin. They thought they were in someone else's life, and in a way, they were. My father, Everett, made his rounds like an inspector, fingers trailing along the marble countertops, the ones I'd selected after 3 revisions with an artisan in Vermont. He tapped one of the pendant lights, as if to test its sturdiness. My mother, Corinne, breezed in behind him, silk scarf tossed just so, pointing out where suitcases should go, where the serving pieces might be stored. I wondered if she could feel it, that tingle in the air, when a space carries someone's story. Mine was in the wood grain, the scent of the linens, the ocean prints I'd captured and framed with my own hands. They didn't notice, of course. They never had. James arrived next, my older brother, suit-pressed even on vacation. His wife followed, all manicured politeness, and then their kids, who spilled in with the wide eyes of children, allowed to run wild in unfamiliar spaces. Melody, my younger sister, rolled in late with her husband and 3 impeccably dressed children, all matching monogrammed tote bags and pre-rehearsed thank yous. No one asked where I was, because no one expected me to exist here. I watched them laugh over wine on the deck, setting out family photos on the entryway table, pictures from birthdays I'd missed, weddings I wasn't invited to. One photo had me in it, just one. I watched my mother slowly slide it behind another frame. Deliberate, cruel, in that quiet, practiced way only she knew how to deliver. This wasn't just a rental to them. It was a canvas for yet another curated memory. Another holiday, where the truth had no place. They didn't know they were walking on sacred ground. Not sacred because of wealth or location, but because this house was born out of my struggle. It had once belonged to a woman named Margot Delaney, a former creative director, who saw something in me no one else did. She gave me my first luxury photography contract and later left me this property, along with a handwritten note. Make it your own. And more importantly, make it work for you. I did. The guest house had become my studio. Coastal Aura, my business, was now one of the most in-demand architectural photography brands in the Northeast. I'd shot penthouses in Tribeca, vineyard estates in Sonoma, and beachfront properties that sold before they even hit the market, because of the way I framed the light. Because I saw angles others didn't, and still, I'd never sent a single update to my family. Let them believe what they wanted. Let them continue spinning their tale of the black sheep who couldn't handle pressure. Until now. At first, I considered leaving for the week. Let them have their little reunion. Let them pose in their coordinated whites by the dunes and never know whose house they'd posed in. But then my mother posted a picture, her first Facebook update in years. She stood in front of my hydrangeas, captioned, "Just a humble little retreat. Nothing extravagant, just us." Humble, nothing extravagant. A $14,000 per week estate with heated floors and a private chef was humble to her. Because, in her mind, she still owned the narrative. I was still gone, still silent. But I wasn't. Not anymore. Tomorrow, I would walk in through the front door of my own house and let them choke on the truth they had spent a decade burying. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I sat in the guest house, the one I'd converted into my studio, going over client edits and calibrating equipment, with the same obsessive focus that had gotten me here. The light boxes were off, but the soft glow of my screen illuminated prints lining the walls. Modernist homes bathed in golden dusk, sleek interiors with clean shadows. I'd shot all of them. No assistants, no inherited name to open doors. Just me, my camera, and an unwillingness to fade quietly. It still stung sometimes. Not the struggle that I'd endured, but the years of silence, the deliberate erasure. I'd become a myth in my own family, mentioned only in half whispers, or not at all. Melody had blocked me. James had offered empty check-ins during year 1, then fell off the map. My parents? Total blackout. They didn't want updates, so I never gave them any. They never asked what became of the girl who left home with a Canon Rebel and a $1,000 graduation check. They didn't know I slept in hostels and walked 3 miles to jobs when I couldn't afford subway fare. That I shot free events in exchange for boxed dinners and referral emails. That I once stood in the freezing rain for 6 hours to get the perfect exterior twilight shot of a brownstone, just to impress a realtor who didn't even call me back. But some noticed. Margot Delaney, in particular. She was sharp, no nonsense, and terrifying at first. I met her during a last-minute shoot, when her regular photographer canceled. She didn't smile much, but she watched, closely. When I rearranged a set of dining chairs, without being asked, just to better balance the symmetry in her shot list, she raised an eyebrow. "You've done this before." "No," I'd said. "But I want to." That was enough for her. In the months that followed, Margot became more than a client. She became my mentor, my example, and eventually, without warning, my benefactor. I had no idea she'd left the house to me until I was called into her lawyer's office 6 weeks after she passed. I thought it was about a camera, or maybe a print. Instead, the attorney handed me a deed. "To the Montauk house," he said. She wanted it to go to someone who understood beauty. There was also a note scrawled in her handwriting on thick paper. "Talia, use this place. Not to escape, to build. You saw what no one else did, not even my children. That matters more than blood." That was the beginning of everything. I turned the guest cottage into a full-service creative studio. Coastal Aura Studio was born with 2 hands, 3 lenses, and a mountain of ambition. In just under 5 years, I went from second shooter to brand founder. We were featured in Dwell, Elle Decor, and most recently, Architectural Digest. By the time I was 30, I had 6 employees, 2 satellite teams, and a wait list of clients longer than my parents' vacation itinerary. And yet, not once did I reach out to share any of that. Not even when I saw James on the cover of a business journal accepting some corporate award, beaming with the same grin he used when dismissing me as a creative type. Not even when I saw Melody tagged at gala events, dressed in couture, paid for by a husband who, rumor had it, treated loyalty like a loose guideline. They had made it clear I didn't belong in their curated world, so I stopped trying to fit. Still, something in me burned as I watched them move through my house, taking up space without knowing who had crafted every inch. Talking over wine in my kitchen, complimenting the stonework, wondering aloud which interior designer had nailed that coastal modern blend. None of them ever thought to ask who lived there, because in their world, I never could have. Tomorrow, they'd learn exactly whose vision they were enjoying and what success looked like when built outside the blueprint they tried to force on me. They were all gathered for lunch when I walked in. I had timed it precisely, knew the rhythm of the house, the way my housekeeper, Lenora, had prepared the seafood spread before discreetly slipping out through the side gate. From the cameras, I saw them clink glasses, seated on the expansive deck overlooking the dunes. The weather was cinematic: crisp sun, salt-kissed wind, and just enough breeze to lift my hair as I stepped into the open archway. I didn't announce myself. I let the sound of my heels on the teak floor speak for me. Conversations died mid-sentence. Silverware froze. My mother's hand, mid-gesture, remained suspended in the air, the stem of her wineglass trembling ever so slightly before slipping through her fingers and shattering against the deck. No one moved to clean it up. "Talia," my brother whispered, as if saying my name too loudly might undo the illusion. I smiled. Calm, polished. The kind of smile I reserved for difficult clients or press events. "Hello," I said, scanning the faces that once turned away from me. "I hope you're all enjoying your stay." Melody was the first to recover. Her eyes narrowed. "What are you doing here?" I stepped fully onto the deck, letting the sun hit me squarely. "I live here," James blinked. "You what?" "This is my house." The silence after that was cathedral level. Even the children, 3 of them mid-grape juice battle a moment earlier, stood frozen, juice boxes halfway to their mouths. "That's not possible," my father finally said, his voice low but firm, the same tone he once used to end boardroom debates. "We rented this property through Hampton Prestige Rentals." "Yes?" I nodded. "They manage the house when I'm traveling for work." Another pause. Another breath held. My mother lowered herself slowly back into her chair, her eyes scanning the deck, the house, the water, as if she could recontextualize it all now that she knew whose name was on the deed. "You own this?" she asked, voice tight, clipped. "Yes." "How?" It wasn't curiosity. It was disbelief tangled with offense, like success had been an inheritance stolen, not earned. I didn't answer right away, because just then, a flash of color darted from the table. "Talia! Zoe!" She hurled herself toward me with the kind of unfiltered joy only a child untouched by bitterness could express. Her arms wrapped around my waist, her face buried in my side like she never forgot. "I knew you'd come back," she beamed. "I just knew it." And in that moment, just that one, my composure cracked. I bent down, brushed the hair from her face, and smiled for real. "You've grown so much," I said. "You have your mom's eyes, and your own mind, I hope." Behind her, adults shifted in their seats, unsure of protocol. I was the black sheep resurrected, the uninvited ghost, the landlord at the family table. Dorothy, one of the aunts, cleared her throat awkwardly. "Well," she said with forced cheer, "there's plenty of food. Why don't you stay and eat with us?" I looked at my mother, who flinched at the invitation. "Good." I turned back to Zoe. "Would you like me to stay?" She nodded, grinning. I took the empty chair beside her, and for the first time in a decade, I sat at my family's table. Not as a prodigal child returning home, but as the woman who owned the roof over their heads. The meal passed like a strained performance, forks clinking too softly, voices too careful, as if one wrong word might shatter the illusion that this was just another pleasant family gathering. But the illusion had already cracked. I was the crack, the reminder that erasure has consequences. No one mentioned the house again, but their eyes kept drifting toward the art on the walls, the built-in shelves, the sunset view perfectly framed through the arched windows. They saw it differently now, not as a rented backdrop, but a world someone they discarded had built. Zoe chattered beside me, filling the space others avoided. She asked about my studio, about the cameras I used, about how I got the ocean to look so shiny in photos. I answered her like no one else was listening. For a while, maybe no one was. But after dessert, James approached, while the others lingered on the patio. "You look, well," he said, hands in his pockets. I am. A pause. They told everyone you'd had some kind of breakdown, he added, after graduation, that you weren't stable enough for the real world. That story must have made them feel better than the truth. James shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know how to push back. I was just trying to keep the peace. Peace for whom? I asked, already knowing the answer. He didn't reply. Later that evening, Melody joined me in the kitchen, silk robe tied too tight, glass of wine untouched in her hand. Tom's cheating, she said bluntly. Has been for years. I raised an eyebrow. You're telling me this why? Because you left, she said. And somehow, your life didn't fall apart. I thought it would. I needed it to. There was no venom in her voice, just exhaustion. It didn't fall apart, I replied. It finally made sense. She looked down at the floor. I can't leave, she whispered. I gave up everything for that marriage, and there's nothing waiting for me if I walk out. I didn't say I was sorry, because I wasn't. I wasn't sorry I'd left. I wasn't sorry I'd succeeded without their approval. But I understood now. My freedom had cost her a mirror she couldn't face. We stood there in silence for a moment, two women shaped by the same house, but cracked in different places. I called the family together the next morning, not in anger, not to gloat, but because I was done with silence. We gathered in the living room, coffee cups in hand, tension pressed into every glance. I'm not here to pretend the past didn't happen, I began, and I'm not interested in being welcomed back under old terms. That version of me doesn't exist anymore. My father leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Then what are you asking for? Nothing, I said. Except honesty, mutual respect, a relationship that isn't built in obligation or edited memories. Melody looked away. James nodded once. I won't chase closeness, I continued, but I'll be open to it. Emails, the occasional dinner, a real conversation, not about who we were, but who we are now. It was a simple offer and a hard one, because it meant giving up control. For once, my parents didn't interrupt. After a pause, my father said, You've become quite the negotiator. I learned from you, I replied, even if I chose a different language. A flicker of something passed across his face. Not quite pride, not quite regret. Maybe both. Then I turned to Zoe. I'd like to mentor her, I said. She's got an eye, real potential. Her mother stiffened. She has school, college prep? She can do both, I said. I did. Zoe's eyes lit up. She didn't speak, but I saw the answer on her face. I didn't ask for approval. I gave the option. And that was the difference now. I wasn't returning to the family. I was redefining what family meant. They left 2 days later, a slow and quiet departure marked by stiff embraces and careful words. James hugged me first. This time, it wasn't the stiff, guilt-laced formality from earlier. He held on an extra beat and said, Dinner next month? I'll be in Manhattan. I nodded. Send the date? Melody stood by the SUV, her kids buckled in, her husband checking his phone. She didn't move toward me, but her voice was low and unexpectedly soft. Thanks. For not saying more, for not judging. I've been where you are, I replied, just in a different costume. She gave me the faintest of smiles before sliding into the passenger seat. My mother approached next. She looked tired. Not in the way makeup can fix, but in the way someone looks when they've run out of stories to spin. This house, she said, glancing at the porch, the garden, the view. It's beautiful. You've built something real. I have. She touched my arm, tentative. We didn't see it then, but we see it now. It wasn't an apology, but it was more than I'd ever expected. My father, ever the last to speak, lingered at the edge of the walkway. We've been talking, your mother and I. If you're open to it, perhaps we could keep talking, over time. On my terms, I said. He nodded. That's fair. Then they were gone, their caravan of SUVs disappearing down the gravel road, like a chapter finally closing. Inside, the house was quiet again, But this time, it wasn't hollow. It felt whole. Mine. That evening, I found a folded note on the kitchen counter. Zoe's handwriting, small and determined. Thank you for showing me I don't have to shrink to fit. Later, under a silver sky, I walked the shoreline alone. 10 years ago, I left with a stubborn belief that I was meant for more. Now I owned the place they once told me I'd never belong. And that silence? It no longer haunted me. It honored me.